The Supreme Council of the Galactic Sovereignty met in their crystal chamber, floating somewhere in the Andromeda sector. 12 beings from 12 different worlds sat in a perfect circle. Their bodies glowed with the soft light of authority. They had ruled 10,000 worlds for 10,000 years. They had brought peace to countless civilizations. They had never failed in their sacred duty. Today they would declare war on a small blue planet called Earth. Chancellor Vorn stood at the center of the circle. His silver robes touched the floor without making a sound. He held a data tablet that contained 47 separate violations of galactic law, all committed by the humans of Earth, all completely unprovoked. "The evidence is clear," Vorn said. His voice echoed in the chamber. "These humans have broadcast electromagnetic signals across protected space. They have contaminated 3 sterile asteroid fields with their primitive probes. They have transmitted mathematical formulas that reveal their location to predator species. By our ancient laws, we must respond." The council nodded in agreement. They had no choice. The laws were 10,000 years old. The laws had kept the galaxy safe. The laws must be followed. "Prepare the Declaration of Intent," Vorn commanded. "We shall follow proper protocol. 30 days' notice before military action. This is the civilized way." In a laboratory beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen. She had worked for SETI for 30 years. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence had been her life's work. Tonight, something strange appeared in her data, a signal, clear and powerful, not from any human source. Her hands shook as she ran the analysis again. The signal was definitely artificial. It came from somewhere beyond the solar system. It contained complex mathematical patterns. This was it. This was first contact. She picked up her phone and called her supervisor. The phone rang 4 times before someone answered. "Dr. Martinez, I think I found something. A real signal. We need to alert the director immediately." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Sarah, it's 3 in the morning. Are you sure this isn't another false alarm? Remember last month when you thought you found something and it was just a microwave oven? This is different. The signal is, send me your data. I'll look at it on Monday." "Get some sleep, Sarah. You've been working too hard." The line went dead. Sarah looked back at her screen. The signal was still there, clear and beautiful. A message from the stars. She wrote up a full report and sent it to every contact she had in the scientific community. Surely someone would listen. Across the planet, humanity continued its normal chaos. In New York, people argued about the latest superhero movie. Was it better than the last one? The internet had opinions. Millions of opinions. In Tokyo, a new video game was launching at midnight. Thousands of people stood in line checking their phones, talking about strategy guides that didn't exist yet. In London, politicians shouted at each other about economic policy. The same arguments they had been having for decades. Nothing ever really changed. In Mumbai, a young couple got married. Fireworks lit up the sky. Families danced and celebrated. Life continued. In Los Angeles, a billionaire announced his latest plan to colonize Mars. The rocket would launch in 6 months. Probably. His last 3 launches had exploded on the pad, but this time would be different. The press conference had very good catering. Nobody noticed the signal from space. Nobody except Sarah Chen, and nobody was listening to her. The Galactic Sovereignty's war fleet assembled at the edge of the solar system. 50 warships, each one a masterpiece of engineering. They had crystal hulls that could withstand any weapon. They had energy shields that had never been penetrated. They had crews trained in the ancient art of honorable warfare. Fleet Commander Zalth stood on the bridge of his flagship. He was a Kryn, a species that looked vaguely like a very tall blue mantis. His species had been warriors once, thousands of years ago. Now they were peacekeepers, gentle warriors who only fought when the law demanded it. "Status report," Zalth said to his second officer. "All ships are in position, Commander. The Declaration of Intent was transmitted 28 days ago. We have received no response from the human civilization. In 2 days, we may begin operations according to galactic law." Zalth felt something strange in his chest. Was it excitement, fear? He hadn't fought a real battle in his entire career. None of them had. The galaxy had been at peace for so long. "What do we know about these humans?" he asked. His tactical officer brought up a holographic display. A small blue planet appeared in the air. White clouds swirled over green and brown continents. "They are a Class 3 civilization, Commander. They have barely left their homeworld. They have primitive nuclear technology. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel. This should be a simple operation. We show force, they surrender. We establish proper governance, standard procedure. Zolth studied the planet. It looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. Have they responded to our declaration at all? No, Commander. Our linguistic experts believe they may not have the technology to decode our message. They are very primitive. Then they don't even know we're coming? Apparently not, Commander. Somewhere in the back of Zolth's mind, a small voice whispered that this seemed wrong. How could you have an honorable war with someone who didn't know they were at war? But the law was clear. The declaration had been sent. The waiting period was almost over. They would proceed. On Earth, Sarah Chen's report sat in 47 email inboxes, unread. 3 people had opened it, glanced at the first page, and assumed it was spam. One person had replied with, "Please remove me from this mailing list." Her supervisor never looked at it. He was too busy preparing a budget request. The director of SETI never saw it. He was at a conference in Switzerland, giving speeches about the importance of continuing the search for intelligent life. The military never heard about it. Why would they? Nobody had flagged it as important. Sarah sat in her small apartment eating noodles from a cup, watching the news on TV. A famous actor was getting divorced. A politician had said something controversial. A new type of coffee was trending on social media. The weather would be sunny tomorrow. The signal from space continued to broadcast. It was a countdown, actually. A very precise countdown. In the ancient mathematical language of the galactic sovereignty, it said, 30 days until military action, 29 days until military action, 28 days until military action. But Earth's computers saw it as random noise, background radiation. Nothing important. In orbit around the moon, the galactic sovereignty's advanced scout ship took up position. It was small, barely larger than a human bus. It watched. It recorded. It prepared detailed reports on Earth's civilization. The reports made disturbing reading. These humans had thousands of nuclear weapons. They had been to their own moon 50 years ago and then just stopped going. They had a global communication network and used it mostly to share pictures of cats and argue with strangers. They had divided their one planet into almost 200 separate nations, many of which hated each other. Most disturbing of all, they were constantly at war with each other. Small wars, large wars, wars that had lasted decades. The scout ship's computer counted 17 active military conflicts happening right now on the planet's surface. What kind of species was constantly at war with itself? The report was transmitted back to Commander Zolth. He read it 3 times. They fight each other? He asked his tactical officer. Constantly, Commander. It appears to be their natural state. Zolth felt that strange feeling in his chest again. This time he recognized it was doubt. The 30 days ended on a Tuesday. Commander Zolth gave the order, and 50 warships moved into Earth's orbital space. They came from behind the moon, their crystal hulls reflecting sunlight like diamonds. Each ship was 2 kilometers long. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city. Together they represented the might of an empire that had conquered 10,000 worlds. They expected panic. They expected immediate surrender. They expected Earth's primitive governments to recognize their overwhelming superiority. What they got was silence. Why aren't they responding? Zolth asked. They must see us. We're right there in their sky. His communications officer looked confused. Commander, I'm picking up thousands of human transmissions, but none of them are directed at us. They're talking about something called a pop star's new haircut, and another thing called a stock market crash, and something about a sports game. Are they ignoring us? Is this some kind of psychological tactic? I don't think so, Commander. I think they just haven't noticed us yet. This was impossible. 50 warships in orbit and Earth hadn't noticed. Zolth checked the tactical display. Yes, Earth had satellites. Hundreds of them. Some were clearly military surveillance satellites. They should have detected the fleet immediately. Are we perhaps cloaked? Zolth asked. No, Commander. All ships are running full visibility. We want them to see us, Zolth made a decision. If Earth wouldn't acknowledge them, they would make themselves impossible to ignore. Activate holographic projectors. Display our imperial seal over their major population centers. Traditional size. Make sure they can't miss it. Within minutes, enormous holographic images appeared in the sky over New York, London, Tokyo, Delhi, and 50 other major cities. The galactic sovereignty symbol, a double spiral representing eternal order, hung in the air like a second moon. Each projection was 500 meters across and glowed with soft blue light. In New York's Times Square, tourists stopped and pointed at the sky. Phones came out instantly. Within seconds, the image was trending on social media. "OMG, new Marvel promotion is insane," someone tweeted. "Nike's advertising budget is getting ridiculous," another person posted. "This is definitely for that new space movie. The CGI looks so real." In Tokyo, teenagers gathered to take selfies with the hologram in the background. It would make great content for their social media accounts. In London, a group of protesters assumed it was related to the government's latest controversial policy. They began chanting slogans that had nothing to do with galactic warfare. "Commander," the communications officer said quietly, "they think we're advertising something." Zolth felt his antennae droop. This was not going according to protocol. In 10,000 years of galactic warfare, no species had ever mistaken a declaration of war for a commercial promotion. "Fine," Zolth said. "We proceed to Phase 2. Demonstration bombardment. Choose an uninhabited area and fire warning shots. Nothing lethal, just enough to get their attention." The tactical officer brought up a map of Earth. "Antarctica appears to be largely empty, Commander. Mostly ice. Very few humans. Perfect. Target Antarctica. Fire 3 plasma bursts. Spread them out so they can see it's deliberate." 3 beams of concentrated energy lanced down from orbit. They hit the Antarctic ice shelf with precise accuracy. Massive explosions of steam and melted ice rose into the air. Seismic sensors all over the world registered the impacts. In a research station in Antarctica, 12 scientists ran to their windows. "What was that?" Dr. Peterson shouted. "Seismic activity," his colleague said, checking her instruments. 3 separate impacts. Very unusual pattern. Could it be volcanic? In Antarctica? No, this is something else. They filed a report. It went to the International Geological Survey. It was marked as anomalous seismic events and put in a queue for further study. That queue is currently backed up by 6 months. On the news, a reporter mentioned unusual explosions in Antarctica. Scientists suggested it might be related to climate change, maybe underwater volcanic activity. The story ran for 30 seconds before moving on to a celebrity scandal. Commander Zolth watched all of this on his monitors. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. They just attacked Earth and Earth barely noticed. His tactical officer was equally confused. "Commander, I'm detecting something strange. Earth's military satellites are active and tracking us, but they're not sharing information with each other properly. It seems like different human nations are keeping their observations secret from each other." "Why would they do that?" "I'm not sure, Commander. But according to our intelligence, Earth's nations don't trust each other. They compete for resources and power. Some of them are actively hostile to each other." Zolth tried to understand this. "So they're seeing an alien fleet in orbit, and their first instinct is to keep it secret from their own species?" "It appears so, Commander." In a military bunker deep beneath Colorado, General Catherine Morrison stared at satellite images of the alien fleet. Her staff stood around her in tense silence. "How long have they been there?" She asked. 4 hours, ma'am. They appeared suddenly from behind the moon. And the other nations? China definitely knows. Russia knows. Probably most of the major powers with satellite surveillance. But nobody's talking. Everyone's waiting to see what everyone else does. Morrison rubbed her temples. 50 alien spaceships in orbit, and the world's response was a standoff of silence because nobody wanted to be the first to admit they didn't know what to do. "What about the projections over the cities? The giant blue spiral things?" "Public thinks it's advertising, ma'am. Social media is having a field day with it. Some creative agency is going to win awards for this campaign. And Antarctica. Official statement is unusual seismic activity. Climate-related." Morrison made a decision. "Get me the president. And get me the heads of every intelligence agency. It's time we stop pretending this isn't happening. Ma'am, if we admit there are aliens in orbit, it could cause mass panic. Lieutenant, there are 50 alien warships hanging over our heads. I think a little panic might be appropriate." Back on the flagship, Commander Zolth received a new report from the scout ship that had been observing Earth for weeks. "Commander, you should see this. We've analyzed Earth's military communications. I think we have a serious problem. The report appeared on Zolth's screen. It was a compilation of human military doctrine, weapon systems, and strategic planning. Zolth read it carefully. Then he read it again. "This can't be right," he said. "I've checked it 3 times, Commander. It's accurate." The report showed that humans had developed nuclear weapons, not just a few, thousands of them, enough to destroy their own planet several times over, and they had pointed these weapons at each other for decades, living under the constant threat of total annihilation. The report showed that humans had weapons that were banned under 17 different galactic conventions. Chemical agents, biological agents, landmines that were deliberately designed to maim rather than kill. The report showed that humans had been fighting wars continuously for their entire recorded history. Thousands of years of constant warfare. They had refined killing into a science. But most disturbing was a section on human military philosophy. Phrases like acceptable casualties and collateral damage and total war. Concepts that made Zolth's blood run cold. There was a video attached to the report. A human military officer giving a briefing. Zolth played it. "In the event of a nuclear first strike," the human said calmly, "our response protocols ensure mutually assured destruction. If we go down, everyone goes down. This doctrine has kept the peace for 70 years. Zolth paused the video. "They keep peace by threatening to kill everyone?" "It appears so, Commander." "And this works?" "Apparently it does, Commander. They call it deterrence." Zolth stood very still. Around him, his crew waited for orders. They had come here expecting a simple war against a primitive species. A show of force, a quick surrender, and then peaceful integration into the galactic sovereignty. Instead, they had found a species that had been practicing warfare for thousands of years. A species that had developed weapons so terrible they had agreed never to use them, and then built more anyway. A species that lived every day under the threat of extinction and just carried on with their lives. "Commander," his second officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zolth looked at the blue planet on his screen. Such a beautiful world, and such a strange, terrifying species living on it. "Continue observation," he said finally, "and prepare for ground operations. We need to establish direct contact. We're going to do this properly, according to protocol. We'll land forces at one of their military installations and formally accept their surrender." "And if they don't surrender, Commander?" Zolth didn't answer immediately. On his screen, Earth continued to spin peacefully, unaware, or perhaps just unconcerned. "Then," Zolth said slowly, "we'll find out what happens when the galactic sovereignty goes to war with a species that never stopped fighting." Commander Zolth decided to start small. A surgical strike against Earth's military infrastructure, disable a few satellites, knock out some communications, and force Earth to acknowledge their presence. Clean, professional, minimal casualties. 3 Earth satellites went dark in the span of an hour. Military communications satellites carefully selected to send a message without causing too much disruption. In Washington, alarms sounded. 3 satellites are down, an Air Force colonel reported. All military, all disabled by what appears to be directed energy weapons. The president looked at the assembled military and intelligence chiefs. "Who did it?" "Unknown, sir. The trajectory suggests the weapons came from orbital positions that match the unidentified craft. So the aliens did it?" Everyone in the room shifted uncomfortably. Saying aliens out loud made it real in a way that made everyone nervous. "It appears so, sir." "What about China? Russia?" "Sir, we have back channels with both. They're just as confused as we are. Russia lost 2 satellites as well. China lost 1. Whatever is up there, it's hitting everyone." In Beijing, a similar meeting was taking place. Chinese military leaders studied the same data. They blamed the Americans. In Moscow, Russian intelligence assumed it was a NATO operation. Some kind of new space weapon. In Delhi, Mumbai, and Islamabad, military analysts looked at the same evidence and blamed their traditional enemies. Nobody wanted to believe it was aliens. Aliens were too strange, too uncertain. Much easier to blame old enemies you knew and understood. Commander Zolth watched the results of his strike with growing frustration. "They're still not responding to us," he said. "They're blaming each other." His tactical officer checked the communication intercepts. "Yes, Commander. The humans appear to have a saying, 'Never attribute to aliens what can be adequately explained by human stupidity.' They're looking for human explanations. But we're right here. We're literally in orbit above them. They seem to be very good at ignoring things they don't want to acknowledge, Commander. Zolth made another decision. Fine, ground assault. We land troops at one of their military bases. Face-to-face contact. They can't ignore that. The tactical officer brought up a map of Earth's military installations. Which one, Commander? Something remote. Low population. We want to minimize casualties. This is supposed to be a police action, not a massacre. There's a facility in the desert region of North America, called Area 51. It appears to be a testing site for experimental aircraft. Perfect. Send 3 dropships, 200 soldiers, standard peacekeeping loadout, non-lethal weapons preferred. We go in, secure the facility, take prisoners, and force a diplomatic response. The dropships launched from the flagship. They were smooth, silver ovals that descended through Earth's atmosphere without making a sound. They landed just after dawn in the Nevada desert, touching down on the main runway of the military base. 200 Galactic Sovereignty soldiers disembarked. They were a mix of species, Kryn warriors, Selthan engineers, and Vorn heavy troops. All of them wore ceremonial armor that had been polished to a mirror shine. All of them carried weapons that could stun or disable without killing. They were peacekeepers, not murderers. They expected fear. They expected surrender. They expected Earth's primitive soldiers to recognize superior force. What they got was a very different response. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez had been having a normal morning. Coffee, breakfast burrito, and routine patrol of the base perimeter. Then 3 silver ships landed on the runway and 200 aliens in fancy armor stepped out. Mike stared at them for exactly 3 seconds. Then his training kicked in. Contact! Contact unknown hostiles on the runway! All units respond. Alarms blared across the base. Soldiers grabbed weapons and ran toward the runway. Helicopter pilots fired up their engines. In the command center, officers started making calls to Washington while simultaneously ordering everyone to defensive positions. The Galactic Sovereignty soldiers advanced in perfect formation. It was a standard intimidation display, meant to show overwhelming force while giving the enemy time to surrender. It had worked on 300 different worlds. Then someone opened fire. Energy shields flared as bullets bounced off invisible barriers. The Sovereignty soldiers stopped, confused. Why were the humans shooting? This was supposed to be a peaceful occupation. Didn't they understand they were hopelessly outmatched? Return fire, the Sovereignty commander ordered. Non-lethal only! Stun beams lanced out from alien weapons. They hit running soldiers and knocked them unconscious. The Sovereignty troops continued their advance, methodical and professional. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He'd been in firefights before, but he'd never fought aliens. Still, training was training. Enemy combatants were enemy combatants, RPG. Someone shouted. A rocket-propelled grenade streaked across the tarmac and exploded against an alien soldier's energy shield. The shield held, but the alien stumbled backward. They have shields. Concentrate fire! The battle quickly became chaos. Earth soldiers used every tactic they knew. They called in air support. They used grenades. They fell back to defensive positions and turned the base into a fortress. Some soldiers grabbed experimental weapons from the testing facility and used them without even knowing what they did. One experimental electromagnetic pulse weapon knocked out 3 aliens' shields at once. Another weapon, some kind of sonic disruptor, made the aliens' formation break apart in confusion. The Sovereignty soldiers fought back professionally. They were well trained. They had superior weapons. They had shields and armor. But they were trained for peacekeeping, not war. They advanced slowly and carefully, always checking for civilian casualties, always trying to minimize damage. Earth soldiers fought like every battle was the last battle. They used cover and concealment. They hit and ran. They set up ambushes and traps. They didn't fight fair or honorably. They fought to win. After 2 hours, the Sovereignty forces had secured half the base. But they'd taken casualties. Not deaths, thankfully, but injuries. And they'd been forced to use lethal weapons in several situations. This was supposed to be a simple operation. It was turning into a real battle. Commander Zolth watched the battle from orbit. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Why aren't they surrendering? He asked. We have superior technology. Superior numbers. We're being as gentle as possible. Why are they still fighting? His cultural advisor, a thin being named Sess, who had spent weeks studying Earth, spoke quietly. Commander, I don't think they know how to surrender. Look at their history. Humans who surrender are often killed or enslaved. Their instinct is to fight until they can't fight anymore. That's barbaric. That's humanity, Commander. On Earth, news of the battle finally broke. A soldier had live-streamed the first few minutes on their phone before communications were jammed. The video was grainy and chaotic, but it clearly showed aliens attacking a military base. The world exploded into activity. Every nation immediately assumed the aliens would attack them next. Military forces around the world went on high alert. Ancient defense plans were pulled out and updated. Weapons were prepared. Troops were mobilized. In the United Nations, an emergency session was called. Delegates shouted at each other in 17 languages. Who had provoked the aliens? What did they want? How should humanity respond? In the streets, people panicked. Some ran to grocery stores and stripped the shelves. Others ran to churches and prayed. Others just went to work because rent was due, and aliens or not, bills needed to be paid. In small towns and large cities, people looked up at the sky and wondered if they would see alien ships. Some people got out their guns. Some people got out their cameras. Some people got out welcome signs, hoping the aliens were friendly. The battle at Area 51 finally ended when the sovereignty forces withdrew back to their dropships. They had secured part of the base, but the cost had been too high. 17 soldiers injured. Morale was low. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. Commander Zolth received the report from his ground commander. Sir, we've encountered significant resistance. The humans fight with desperation. They don't seem to care about casualties. They use tactics that are highly illegal under galactic law. They're not surrendering. Casualties? Zolth asked. On our side, 17 injured. On the human side, approximately 43 dead, 60 wounded. They just kept fighting, sir. Even when we knocked them down, they got back up. Zolth felt sick. 43 dead. This was supposed to be a peacekeeping mission. How had it gone so wrong? And the base? Partially secured, sir. But the humans called for reinforcements. We detected multiple military units heading to the location. We withdrew rather than escalate further. Zolth dismissed his officer and sat alone in his command chamber. On the screen in front of him, Earth continued to spin. Beautiful and terrible. His second officer entered quietly. Commander, we're receiving multiple transmissions from Earth. Different nations, different languages. We've managed to translate most of them. What do they say? They're threats, Commander. Each nation is threatening us independently. Some are demanding we surrender. Some are demanding we leave. Several have threatened to use their nuclear weapons if we don't withdraw immediately. They're threatening us? We have 50 warships. They have primitive rockets. 3 weeks after the Battle of Area 51, the United Nations held an unprecedented session. For the first time in human history, nearly every nation agreed on something. Aliens were a problem that affected everyone. Secretary General Chen stood at the podium, looking at the assembled delegates. We face an existential threat. The galactic sovereignty has superior technology and numbers, but they made one critical mistake. They think we'll fight them like we fight each other. With rules, with restraint, with honor. She paused and a thin smile crossed her face. They're wrong. In military bases around the world, scientists and engineers worked on the wreckage from Area 51. Pieces of alien armor, fragments of energy weapons, parts of a damaged shield generator, one intact alien communication device. The scientists didn't work together. That would have been too cooperative. Instead, each nation raced to reverse engineer the technology first. America wanted to beat China. China wanted to beat Russia. Russia wanted to beat everyone. The European Union worked in secret. India kept their discoveries classified. Israel, Japan, South Korea, and 24 other nations all scrambled to be first. Competition drove innovation faster than cooperation ever could. In a laboratory in Beijing, Dr. Liu held up a piece of alien metal. It's some kind of crystal metal composite. Very light, very strong. But look at this, she put it under a hydraulic press. The metal held for a moment, then suddenly shattered. It's designed to resist energy weapons, plasma, lasers, that kind of thing. But physical force? Kinetic energy? It's actually weaker than our steel. So bullets work better than their own weapons? Much better. Their armor is optimized for the wrong kind of war. Similar discoveries happened in dozens of labs around the world. The alien shields could stop energy weapons but were nearly useless against physical projectiles. The alien sensors could detect electromagnetic signatures but missed low-tech threats. The alien weapons were precisely calibrated for stunning or disabling, but took time to recalibrate for lethal force. The aliens had designed their military for peacekeeping. Humans had designed theirs for killing. In orbit, Commander Zolth reviewed casualty reports. Over 3 weeks, his forces had engaged in 17 separate battles with human forces. They'd won most of them, technically. They'd secured several military installations. They'd destroyed human aircraft and tanks, but the cost kept climbing. 32 dead, over 200 wounded, and the humans were learning fast. "Show me the latest engagement," Zolth ordered. The video played. A sovereignty patrol in the jungles of South America, ambushed by human forces. But these humans weren't using standard tactics anymore. They'd adapted. They wore improvised armor made from alien materials they'd captured. They used human weapons modified with alien power cells. They'd learned to target the weak points in sovereignty armor. And they'd learned something else, Commander. The tactical officer said quietly, "The humans are using our own weapons against us. They're taking them from our casualties and using them immediately. We've lost 17 plasma rifles, 4 shield generators, and 2 communication arrays. How are they learning so fast? I think it's desperation, Commander. And creativity. They try everything. Most of it fails. But when something works, they share it immediately. Their entire global network is full of videos showing how to fight us." Zolth pulled up the human internet. It was chaos. Millions of humans sharing information. How to disable alien shields with a car battery. Weak points in sovereignty armor, a guide. Found alien weapon, here's how it works. There were memes. Humans were making jokes about the invasion. There was art. There was music. There were conspiracy theories. And mixed in with all the noise, there was real, useful tactical information spreading at the speed of light. "They've weaponized their communication network," Zolth said in disbelief. In a garage in Texas, a teenage girl named Maria was working on something the Galactic Sovereignty would have found horrifying. She was a physics student, very good with computers, very good with math. She'd watched every video of the alien technology she could find. "Mom, I think I figured something out," she called out. Her mother was in the kitchen, stress baking for the 3rd day in a row. Alien invasion or not, finals were next week. "What, honey? You know how the aliens use plasma weapons? I think I can make one. Better than theirs, actually. I just need a microwave, a car battery, and this thing I printed on the 3D printer." "Absolutely not. The last time you experimented, you knocked out power for the whole neighborhood." "But Mom, this is for the war effort." "Maria, you are 17 years old. You are not building weapons in my garage." But Maria wasn't the only one. Across the world, people were experimenting. Most of it was useless. Some of it was dangerous. But occasionally, someone stumbled onto something that worked. A farmer in India discovered that his crop dusting equipment, with minor modifications, could disperse a cloud of metal particles that completely disabled alien sensors. A mechanic in Germany figured out that diesel engines, low-tech and electromagnetic silent, couldn't be detected by alien scanning equipment. Group of teenagers in South Korea hacked into an alien communication network using nothing but gaming computers and too much caffeine. Each discovery spread across the internet. Each discovery got refined, improved, and weaponized. The Galactic Sovereignty watched in horror as humanity turned everything into weapons. Agricultural equipment, construction tools, toys, entertainment devices. If it existed, humans could weaponize it. In a laboratory in Switzerland, a group of physicists were working on something else. They'd been studying the alien energy weapons and had made a disturbing discovery. Dr. Sarah Chen, the same woman who'd first detected the alien signal months ago, stood in front of a blackboard covered in equations. The aliens used contained plasma. Very efficient, very stable, but I think we can make it unstable. Her colleague, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, looked worried. "Sarah, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, that's incredibly dangerous." "I know. But it works. Look at the math." The equations showed a weapon that would create a cascading plasma reaction, essentially a bomb that would feed on itself until it consumed everything in a 50-meter radius. "Sarah, this was banned. After the nuclear tests in the 1960s, the international community agreed never to develop this kind of weapon. It's too destructive." That was before aliens invaded. Dr. Tanaka stared at the equations. They worked. The weapon was theoretically possible. and it would be devastatingly effective against the alien forces. If we build this, Tanaka said slowly, we become the monsters. If we don't build this, Sarah replied, we might lose. They looked at each other for a long moment. Finally, Tanaka picked up a marker and started adding to the equations. Let's at least make it better than your first design. If we're going to build a doomsday weapon, we should do it right. Commander Zolth received an intelligence report that made his blood run cold. Humans had developed a weapon that violated 17 different galactic conventions. A weapon so terrible that the sovereignty had banned it 5,000 years ago after watching it devastate an entire planet. He watched the historical footage. A planet called Thorn, a beautiful world reduced to ash in a matter of days. The cascading plasma reactions had burned the atmosphere itself. 3 billion people died. The survivors wished they hadn't, and now humans had invented the same weapon, independently in 3 weeks. Did they steal the plans from us? Zolth asked. No, Commander. They invented it themselves. Our scientists say they used completely different mathematics but arrived at the same result. It's actually more efficient than our original design. Have they tested it? Not yet. But according to our intercepts, they're considering it. And Commander, when we showed one of their scientists the historical footage, do you know what she said? What? She asked if they could make it bigger. Zolth sat down heavily. Around him, his command staff stood in uncomfortable silence. We've been at peace for 3,000 years, Zolth said quietly. We've forgotten what war really means. These humans, they've never stopped. They've been fighting for their entire existence. They've developed strategies and weapons and tactics that we've spent millennia trying to forget. What do we do, Commander? His second officer asked. I don't know. We're supposed to be the advanced civilization. We're supposed to bring order and peace. Instead, we've picked a fight with a species that treats war like a sport. They're learning faster than we can adapt. They're turning everything into weapons. And now they've independently invented one of the most terrible weapons in galactic history. And they want to make it bigger. He looked at the blue planet on his screen, still beautiful, still spinning peacefully. But now he saw it differently. Not a primitive world to be conquered, but a world of 7 billion warriors who had been preparing for this their entire history. Get me a channel to the Supreme Council, Zolth said. They need to know what we're facing. On Earth, the war continued. Humans died, aliens died, cities were damaged, battles raged across 6 continents. But humanity was adapting, learning, growing stronger. In a military briefing in Washington, General Morrison addressed a room full of officers. We're not winning, she said, but we're not losing either. 6 months after the war began, Commander Zolth stood in front of the Supreme Council once again. This time he appeared via hologram from Earth's orbit. This time he did not stand proud and confident. This time he looked tired. Honorable Council, he said, I request permission to open negotiations for a ceasefire. The 12 members of the council looked at him in silence. Chancellor Vorn spoke first. Commander Zolth, you have 50 warships. They have primitive rockets. How is this war not already won? Because, Honorable Chancellor, we are not fighting the war we prepared for. We prepared for a peacekeeping action against a primitive species. Instead, we are fighting a total war against a species that has been preparing for total war for their entire existence. Zolth pulled up statistics. In 6 months, we have lost 73 soldiers killed, 312 wounded, 2 dropships destroyed, 1 warship damaged. We have engaged in over 200 separate battles. We have won most of them by traditional military standards. But the humans don't care about traditional standards. Explain, Vorn said. They don't fight to win battles. They fight to make the war too expensive to continue. They hit our supply lines. They ambush our patrols. They've reverse-engineered our technology and are using it against us. They've developed new weapons that violate galactic law, and most concerning, they show no signs of surrendering. Another council member spoke up. What are our casualties compared to theirs? Human casualties are approximately 40 times higher than ours. Over 3,000 confirmed killed, 10,000 wounded. By any reasonable metric, we are winning. Then why request a ceasefire? Zolth chose his words carefully. Because winning battles is not the same as winning a war. Our soldiers are exhausted. Morale is collapsing. Many are developing psychological trauma from fighting humans. Our war budget has exceeded projections by 300%, and the humans are learning faster than we can adapt. He paused. Also, they have developed weapons we thought were lost to history. Terrible weapons, and they are threatening to use them. The council was silent. Finally, Vorn spoke. Very well. Open negotiations. But Commander Zolth, you will not offer generous terms. They are the ones who violated galactic law. They are the ones who fired first. We are in the right. Yes, Honorable Chancellor. But as Zolth's hologram faded, he thought to himself that being right didn't matter much when the other side refused to lose. The peace negotiations were held in a neutral location, a space station that had been hastily constructed at one of Earth's Lagrange points. The station was small, ugly, and half of the systems didn't work properly. But it was neutral ground. The human delegation arrived in a converted commercial spacecraft. It was loud, inefficient, and left a trail of debris, but it worked. The delegation consisted of representatives from the United Nations, several major military powers, and for some reason, 2 scientists and a teenager. The Galactic Sovereignty delegation arrived in a perfectly designed diplomatic shuttle. Smooth, silent, and efficient, the delegation consisted of Commander Zolth, Chancellor Vorn, 3 diplomatic specialists, and a cultural advisor. They met in a conference room that smelled faintly of recycled air and fear. Chancellor, Vorn opened with a formal statement that had been carefully prepared by the Council's best speechwriters. It outlined humanity's violations of galactic law, the sovereignty's legal right to military action, and the terms for peace. Earth would acknowledge sovereignty jurisdiction, pay reparations, and accept integration into galactic civilization. The head of the human delegation, Secretary General Chen, listened politely. Then she laughed. You're joking, right? Vorn was taken aback. Laughter was not part of the negotiation protocol. I assure you we are quite serious. Let me make sure I understand. You showed up uninvited. You attacked our satellites. You invaded our military bases. You killed 3,000 of our people. And now you want us to pay you and accept your government? You violated galactic law. What galactic law? We didn't even know you existed until you started shooting at us. This was not going according to protocol. Zolth decided to intervene. Perhaps we could start over. Both sides have grievances. Both sides have suffered losses. Can we find common ground? The Russian representative spoke up. What do you actually want? Why are you here? Vorn tried to regain control of the negotiation. We are here to bring order to the galaxy, to ensure all species follow the law, to create peace by invading planets. When necessary, yes. The Chinese representative leaned forward. How many planets have you invaded? Over the past 10,000 years. Approximately 400. And how many fought back? Vorn consulted his notes. Counting Earth? 1. The room went very quiet. Wait, Chen said. You've invaded 400 planets and we're the only ones who fought back? Yes. Most species recognize the futility of resistance and accept integration peacefully. And that doesn't tell you something about humanity? Zolth spoke quietly. It tells us that you are either very brave or very foolish. We haven't determined which yet. The American General Morrison, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke. Let me ask you something. How many casualties can you sustain? In your whole fleet, all 50 ships. How many soldiers do you have? Approximately 50,000, Vorn said. And you've already lost 73 with over 300 wounded in 6 months. At this rate, your casualty rate will be over 10% annually. Meanwhile, Earth has a population of 7 billion. Even if you kill us at a ratio of 40-1, we can sustain this war for decades. Can you? Vorn didn't answer. Morrison continued. Also, we've been working on new weapons. Some of them are quite nasty. We'd rather not use them. But if you force us to, we will. Are you threatening us? Vorn asked. No, I'm being honest with you. This war is expensive for both of us. The difference is we can afford it. Can you? The negotiations continued for 3 days. Both sides argued. Both sides made threats. Both sides tried to gain advantage. But slowly, gradually, a strange kind of understanding emerged. On the 3rd day, over terrible space station coffee, Zolth found himself sitting with Morrison in a quiet corner. Your soldiers fought well, Morrison said. Professionally, honorably. Yours fought terrifyingly, Zolth replied. Without rules. Without restraint, we had to. You had better weapons. And you still almost won. They sat in silence for a moment. Why did you invade us? Morrison asked. What did we actually do? Zolth pulled up a list. 47 violations of galactic law. Broadcasting signals into protected space. contaminating sterile asteroid fields, revealing your location to predator species. In short, you were being dangerously careless. So you invaded us to protect us? In essence, yes. Morrison laughed bitterly. You know what the funny part is? If you'd just sent a message explaining all this, we probably would have cooperated. Maybe not immediately, we're pretty stubborn. But eventually, we did send a message. A formal declaration of intent. We thought it was background radiation. They looked at each other. The absurdity of it all suddenly became clear. A war fought because of a miscommunication. Thousands dead because humans didn't have the right kind of radio. This is the stupidest war I've ever fought, Morrison said. This is the only war I've ever fought, Zolth replied. And I agree. The final peace treaty was strange. Both sides compromised. Earth agreed to follow certain galactic laws, once they were properly explained in a format humans could actually understand. The sovereignty agreed to withdraw their military forces and establish a diplomatic embassy instead of a military occupation. Earth would pay no reparations. The sovereignty would pay for reconstruction of damaged areas. Both sides would exchange prisoners. Both sides would share technology, though at a pace that wouldn't overwhelm Earth's economy. Most importantly, both sides agreed to cultural exchange programs. The sovereignty would send teachers and scientists to Earth. Earth would send ambassadors and artists to the sovereignty. The reasoning was simple. If they understood each other better, maybe they wouldn't try to kill each other next time. The treaty was signed. The war was over. Technically, nobody won. Practically, both sides were relieved it was done. As the sovereignty fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Zolth stood on his bridge one last time looking at the blue planet. Status of the Cultural Liaison Program? He asked. First liaison arrives on Earth next week, Commander. A diplomatic specialist named Sess. They volunteered. Brave of them. Or foolish, sir. 2 weeks later, Sess stood in a small apartment in New York City. The apartment was loud. The street outside was loud. Everything on Earth was loud. They sat at a desk and began writing their first official report to the Galactic Sovereignty. Preliminary Cultural Assessment of Earth. Day 14. I have made a terrible mistake volunteering for this assignment. Humans have created a global communication network they call the Internet. They use it primarily to argue with strangers about topics they don't understand and share images of small carnivorous animals they keep as pets. This network contains all of human knowledge, and they use it to watch videos of people falling down. The humans have divided their single planet into almost 200 nations. These nations compete for resources, prestige, and something called Olympic medals.